No, I'm just sigh of relief, you know.
Uh-huh.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Lonely Gods, episode 67. I'm David Reinhardt, and I'm joined here, as always, by Kate Riley.
Hi.
Hi.
It's me and my fan.
Yes. And we are here this week to talk about the fourth Doctor story, the Sontaran experiment. A very unusual story in the fact that it is only 2 episodes long.
When was the last time we had a two-parter? Was it? It's
I,
probably like the rescue or something.
I can only think of. Wait, which one was the rescue?
That was where they found Vicky and she was on a planet.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That was a
The,
two-parter.
yeah.
Okay, then I can think of the rescue and then that the first Doctor story. I can't remember what it was called, but it was like very early on where the TARDIS gets like stuck.
Oh, Edge of Destruction. Yeah,
Edge
that's
of
right.
Destruction. Those are the only other two-parters I can think of. And then there was that one-parter that was actually really just a prequel for what was
Master
that?
Plan.
Yeah, Master Plan. So we usually don't see these except for like Modern Who. You don't really see these short stories.
Well, it's Modern Who. I guess like their two-parters are the equivalent of classic four-parters anyway,
Yeah,
as far as runtime goes. Although a lot of their episodes are one-offs as well. So
yeah. But it was interesting. It was definitely really interesting. And I found it had a lot of callbacks to previous stuff.
how's that?
Well, like because Sarah Jane's talking about the her other experience with the Sontarans,
Oh yes. Well,
which was a different doctor.
that's true, but it was also only last season. And it's also the Sontaran's only other like appearance, so I think it'd be weirder if she didn't mention it.
Well, I know, but it was you just don't really see that a whole lot.
No?
So, or you haven't really so far.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
Because besides, when the Doctor changed with who was it? Ben and Polly, right?
mhm.
Um, which that was part of the story for that one episode. They haven't like this is it's a little bit wider of a gap than normal when they talk about stuff like that. You know?
Oh, well, I suppose so. But I was just thinking of like, usually when when the Daleks turn up, people are like, ah, yes, the Daleks. We haven't seen you since blah blah blah. You know, but
Well, the Daleks' timelines also started off really weird.
well, it's because we're jumping around a lot in it.
Yeah. Which it makes sense for the show, but like this is the first. I feel like it's just the show's really showing like this is a really good example of how it's building on its own lore.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm not really arguing that it's not good. I feel like it's a little bit more common than you're giving it credit for. But
No, I know, but I just feel like
I do like that Sarah Jane sees Styre, who's the Sontaran in this one, and thinks that it's Lynx from
yeah,
Time Warrior or whatever.
I think it's a very direct. Yeah, it's a very. We've had callbacks before, but this is a very direct callback to a very specific story.
Hmm.
And I think
Well, I'd
that
argue like Planet of the Spiders did that, like calling back to Green Death because they did the whole crystal thing and all that stuff with letters from Joe and what have you.
well, I know, but this is like the first. This is literally between doctors. I think that that's what.
Well, yeah, I guess I haven't really been oblique, but I was thinking like, well, I was thinking of like Spearhead when like the Brigadier obviously is expecting the Doctor to look like Patrick Troughton because of the last two times that they met, and that's why he doesn't believe that John Pertwee is who he says he is. But
Yeah, but that's it's still a little different in my head.
mm,
Just because that's something they would have to explain with a character who wasn't there at the time.
yeah, especially because with that generation, you didn't actually see the change.
Yeah.
Although I figure that it's fairly obvious when you have somebody stumbling into the TARDIS. But anyway,
But you know what I mean. It was still nice. Like I'm complimenting on it. I feel like this is a strong indication that just how good the show is at that.
yeah, it does like to call back, and I think they kind of get increasingly like that, especially as like you head into the '80s, where Doctor Who wasn't quite so popular anymore, and a lot of the people watching it were like the hardcore nerd fans. So, and a lot of the stories kind of started to bring up like old continuity more and more because, you can expect your nerd fans to know about it. And
I know, I like that, and the show's kind of, and it still does that today.
yeah, I mean, the good thing about the new series is that usually when it brings something up from like the classic series or even from previous seasons, like you don't
Have
necessarily have to know it in order to get everything, or if you do, they'll explain it to you.
Yeah.
But some of the 80s Doctor Who continuity is like you have to know what they're talking about because they're moving on quickly.
Okay, so maybe it gets a little bad about that, but it's still a positive when it for like this instance, you didn't need to know the old story.
No.
They explain it slightly, but if you do, it makes it so much more impactful.
Mm.
Anyway, so this is a nice two-part story about the Doctor coming to Earth and finding a Sontaran there.
Yeah, because we're still... I mean, the TARDIS is still on the space station from Ark in Space. He's just come down to make sure the planet's habitable before they all start moving back in.
Yes.
So there's not supposed to be anybody be there, but lo and behold, there's some people and some Sontarans, and, well, a Sontaran. And a ridiculous-looking robot contraption.
Yeah. It reminded me a lot of the probe droid from Star Wars, but like a really shitty knockoff version.
Well, I have to say, like, for something in the 1970s on a Doctor Who budget, it looked pretty good. I mean,
it just looked really weird.
Well, the design is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, the actual apparatus, like, it's surprisingly like articulated and has a lot of moving parts. For something that the show would have built, I guess, because like, it can expand and contract and it moves up and down and like it's got moving parts to it. It's not just like a remote controlled buggy.
Yeah, no, they did a really good job with it.
Which, I mean, I assume that one of the reasons that it could be as good as it is because
it looks like a piece of shit. It looks like a really strange, nonsensical design.
It is. I mean,
but it's very. But like you have to appreciate it because they did a really good. They made a really good robot with a really shitty design.
Well, they did. I mean, as soon as I looked at it, I thought to myself, like, the only word for this thing to describe it is contraption. That's what it is. It's a contraption.
It looks like a toy that you would pick up at a dollar store, except then it moves and looks really good. So it boggles the mind.
That's true, but for it to move around and do all the things that it does, I mean, I wonder if, because I mean, this story is shot entirely on location, so therefore you don't need to have any sets and very minimal props. It was mostly a pretty cheap story to make. I mean, the biggest expense is like room and board at hotels.
Yeah.
And because of that, I wonder if it's probably one of those things where you wouldn't be able to make this thing happen in the studio, but since you don't have you're not spending your budget on pretty much anything else, you could pour a lot of money into making your contraption look good or whatever.
Perhaps. Because I was actually reading a little bit about the episode, and it was kind of interesting that the Robert Holmes wasn't a fan of the 6 parts, thinking that they were padded.
I said that to you last week.
Oh. Well, I forgot.
I'm glad you pay attention to me. But yeah, I mean,
I did. I just forgot. Shut up.
Splitting them up and doing a 4 and a 2 is I mean, it's
also, it's been 2 weeks, damn it. It's been 2 weeks since we actually recorded.
Oh, poor you. I remembered that I said it.
Well, yeah, because you had the thought.
But my thought should have left my mouth, traveled through the internet, and entered your ears, and stayed in your brain.
Well, I forget lots of things.
That's true.
Yeah. The more interesting thing was that the kind of the dark part was that the actor playing the Sontaran died 6 months later after filming this.
Something wrong with his heart or something.
Yeah, because the original costume was really hot, and it exacerbated his heart condition.
Well, so which is why
they made him a new one.
Which looks like shit, by the way.
The face still looks okay, but yeah, the
The
actual
face is
costume.
horrible. I mean, the Sontaran in this one looks like shit, like way shittier than the one in Time Warrior. By far. It doesn't look anywhere near as lifelike. It looks like a plastic
But I
mask.
thought, well, yeah, but I thought the mouth moved better this time.
Yeah, that's true, but it still didn't look very good.
No, no, it was clearly a different shade, too.
Yeah, and it's funny because I mean, especially because Sarah Jane goes, "Oh God, it's Lynx. It looks, all the Sontarans, they're a clone race. They look exactly the same as last time." It's like, no, that doesn't look anything like he used to, at all.
It just it just sucks that they gave him a new suit, but it didn't. The damage was done. Like that. That's just kind of sad. Like that's really fucking dark for a. It's like I enjoyed the story. Did you?
It was all right. I wasn't terribly into it.
But I thought it was a good two-parter. Like it.
Um, I guess. I mean, for me, I feel like the two-parters are kind of best when it's something like Edge of Destruction, where it's kind of weird,
Yeah.
It's off the beaten trail. This one, despite its quirks of being, entirely location, it's not the kind of story that couldn't or wouldn't be done in a four-parter, or God forbid even a six-parter sometimes, with obviously more stuff added to it. And so it
But
just
I feel like if it was longer, it wasn't. Maybe it's like I enjoyed it because it had some interesting elements, but it was short, so it didn't drag out. Like I had a lot less problems with it than I normally would. Because you're right, it's not really that strong of an episode at
no,
all.
I mean it's kind of a popcorn fart of a story, really.
But I kind of just appreciated the fact that when it was one of those, it was nice and short.
Well, I mean, but the thing is like it was too short to have any real depth to anything. It was too short to get into sort of the meat of any issues and happenings, and they couldn't put a lot of
I just like it because
twists into it. It was just really like it was fluff. It felt like filler. It was a quick little thing that didn't really go anywhere or do anything interesting.
I like
bad,
it.
but,
I like it because of the end
which is what?
when they melt the Sontaran.
Well, what did they even do? They fucked with something in his ship, right? It was like it leaked gas onto him or something.
They absorb energy,
Okay.
and they made it so that he went and it fucked with his system, so he just kept absorbing it, and it like destroyed him.
Okay.
I think
I didn't think that effect looked very good. I mean,
It was really fucking weird and but it was creepy because it didn't look good. Like
I think it.
I don't
just
know. It's kind of
kinda
like how
looked bad.
it makes me think of how like some of the weird like claymation and shit from Evil Dead is kind of creepy and slightly unsettling because it's so like unnatural looking.
Well, I mean, I guess in principle it's pretty gruesome, but I also think the effect wasn't done very well. I mean, because it's basically it's literally just an empty suit and like an inflatable Sontaran head they're letting the air out of.
I know it was creepy because of that. Like
What? How is
they
that
deflated the Sontaran like.
It's a balloon. Like, how is that creepy? I don't.
I just feel like it makes me think of whatever they did to the Sontaran would make that make it happen like that, Like, sure, it's a really bad effect, but like, just imagine what they did to it to make it deflate like that.
Well, I did say that it was like it's gruesome from like a story point of view, but I mean as far as production values go, I don't really think that was very awesome.
Well, I just think that's really because Doctor Who doesn't get gruesome like that often.
Well, it's going to.
I know, but it's showing that the show can go there, and I like that. Like, I really appreciate when it does that.
I was trying to think of like how would you do that effect better? I don't really know if it. I mean,
you make it stop motion.
Maybe I don't know if they wouldn't have time for that. Or
no, they wouldn't.
Or you make some like a Sontaran model or dummy out of something, and you
melt it.
You melt it, like actually physically use acid or something. But
or
again,
heat.
time and yeah, or heat.
With a time lapse.
Well, that would be all right. But I mean, again, this is entirely on location, so it's kind of like
Yeah, but just
you have to. It's like it's the filmmaking equivalent of camping out. You got to use
like
what you.
like I'm saying, maybe not the you're right. It really wasn't the greatest effect in practice, but I think that's a good. This episode served as a good, if anything else, because like I said, it was fluff. There's nothing really redeemable about the story. Like the Sontarans came to try to invade the Earth
Again.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the Doctor had to outsmart them, which he does in a very clever way. You got to appreciate that little speech he gave to the commander.
Oh, about how he's like the warrior class of humans.
Yeah.
And I'm about to whoop your ass.
Yeah.
And then there's a terrible fight with an obvious stunt double.
Yeah.
Because Tom Baker broke his collarbone.
Oh man.
And couldn't do the fight. So it's John Pertwee's old stunt double in a Tom Baker wig. Yeah, that's not a good action scene because I mean, you have these close-ups of Tom Baker and then they're cut with the stuntman doing anything physical from behind, and that right there is obvious that it's a stunt double, which is whatever. But on top of that, when you have a close-up on Tom Baker and then you cut back to the stuntman, how Tom Baker is posed does not match how the stuntman is posed. So it's very jarring and completely ruins any sort of illusion of awesome that it might have had, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't know. I can forgive some stuff like that in an older show.
Well, yeah, I mean, John Pertwee had a lot of fight scenes where he was, stunt doubled fairly obviously, and most of the time I didn't really care, but that one was bad. This one wasn't good because they didn't do a good job of matching it.
No, because it was because they basically filled the camera with Tom Baker, and he was sitting upright when they did it, and you can clearly tell.
Well, I thought he was kind of crouched, but I mean, either way. Yeah, it was not really awesome, but I mean, I think for the most part though, filming, holy Christ, Chuck, filming everything on location. I mean, it does add a certain openness and realism to the setting. You wouldn't have gotten this doing a studio jungle,
Yeah, no, it was nice.
It was nice to see the scenery. It was the hills and the rocks and everything. It worked really, really well, and you could have big open panoramic shots of the Doctor standing in a field in the middle of nowhere that you could never have done in studio. So I definitely appreciated that, and it was an interesting experiment. Haha. For the show.
And like I said, if anything, it serves as a good flag to show that Doctor Who can get really fucked up.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it always kind of had. I mean, there's plenty of oddly disturbing things in the '60s, and I mean, John Pertwee's era, I think, was the one that kind of had the least.
Yeah, that's
frightening
it's
content.
Back like that. That's what I'm saying.
It's getting back to how William Hartnell and Patrick.
Yeah,
Troughton
William Hartnell's stuff.
The show was kind of dangerous, and John Pertwee, I think, I wouldn't say his stories were cheery, and there were still certainly some kind of fucked up moments, but his Doctor was kind of such a James Bond that it wasn't. There's not really much that could make him scared.
Yeah.
And it kind of gave the audience more security than I think they would have had when Patrick Troughton's oh crap.
Yeah.
But thinking back to something like Moonbase, where got that really good effect of the Cyberman black virus going through people's veins and stuff. Oh, that looks good.
Well, there's a good there's usually a good. It depends. The best Doctor Who doctors tend to have a good blend of both seeking out a mystery to solve and then just where are we going next, and accidentally stumbling into something really dark and fucked up.
Yeah.
And John Pertwee was mostly the former, we're going to fix this problem instead of unless just blindly stumbling into it.
That's true. And I mean, even though Unit's kind of useless a lot of the time, he had an army at his back.
Yeah.
A lot of the time. which is very different than being in space, completely isolated and kind of screwed, just like Ark in Space was, or like Moon Base or whatever. And I think the one with, as far as like John Pertwee goes, I think the one that has the most content kind of like that has to be Inferno, because I mean,
it's an alternate dimension.
Well, not just the alternate dimension, but like once the infection from the drill pit gets out, and people are turning into the lion from Wizard of Oz, it does become a bit of a zombie movie where they're locked in an office and they're like pounding on the glass trying to break in. That's pretty effective.
But that's of course a standout episode from the season.
That's
from his whole run. Actually.
From his whole run, absolutely, yeah. So
like that and Demons are the two that I can think of, because I mean in Demons he has the whole army on his side.
They're still bloody useless, but I mean when you saw
that's because they're dealing with these dark magical forces with the fucking heat force, the fire force field.
Yeah, I mean John Pertwee's it's not so much like scary contents as just like Tales of the Weird, mad scientist, aliens from Mars, Blair.
Yeah, but it's also like you're right. I guess that's the reason why, as much as I love, and I did love that. I like that we had the season of the Doctor with an army, but there's a lot less pressing danger like there is normally in the show.
Yeah, I mean, even when John Pertwee did go out into space, he usually didn't have. He usually wasn't up shit creek without a paddle very often, I don't think. I mean, he was always very self-assured. And I mean, the other one I thought that was really effective, I guess, for Pertwee isn't so much horror, but I was thinking of like Frontier in Space. Him and Joe are doing their absolute darndest to stop, two empires from going to war, essentially. And there's a kind of a feeling of desperation and helplessness throughout the whole thing, because no matter what they do, nobody's listening to them at all, which is different than Terror, but it's another sort of unique, interesting thing for Pertwee's Doctor, who's usually so very, in control and suave and calm and all that. But
and I guess I missed that. I missed the scrambling, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a very
Doctor Who trait.
It's a very Doctor Who trait, and it's something that I think is kind of. I mean, it's very much a part of the DNA of the show.
Yeah, I mean I guess that's one of the reasons I also kind of miss William Hartnell, because he was a nice blend of both Patrick Troughton and John Pertwee, because he was so confident, but he was often up shit creek without a paddle.
Yeah, absolutely, and I mean Patrick Troughton was probably closer to not in terms of like performance, but in terms of the stories he got, they were still like a good deal closer to Hartnell's than Pertwee's were, and that, like one of the things that really won me over to the new series after the first few episodes is the Christopher Eccleston Dalek episode, where it's one Dalek and it's completely laying waste to this entire compound, and it's like, oh shit, and that was kind of what made me feel like, okay, I'm on board with this new thing, because it's definitely having that. Preserving that, oh goodness, we're totally boned kind of feel.
Which is awesome, because because the Daleks sometimes get a little goofy with how easily they're defeated and stuff, and that made the Daleks feel like such badasses again.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean that's why I enjoy the Dalek Empire audio spin-off so much, because all those characters are original creations. There's you don't really feel safe in who's going to live and who's going to die, and there's no Doctor to save you, so that the Daleks get to be a frightening military power rampaging through everything.
I feel like that's why I haven't gotten into it as much yet, because I keep like, this is a Doctor Who audio story, and it's like, but I know there's no Doctor Who characters I'm gonna know, and it's just.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you know what the Daleks are, and it's kind of it.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna listen to it by next week.
Yeah, but
I'm excited.
It makes the Daleks feel powerful, and it makes them feel scary. And I don't really like Dalek stories when they kind of defang them and make them funny. I guess that's a bit rich coming from me, because I love Evil of the Daleks so much, and that has the dizzy Daleks. But that was something that the Doctor did to them. They weren't just doing that.
Yeah, and I think you can do both. I think the problem is I like to do too many of the defanging in a row. Yeah.
So, but I mean, this whole season so far has been pretty solid. I mean, there hasn't really been a dud yet, and
even though this could be the first one we could consider a dud, I feel like because it was so
Well, it's not
short
it's
and
not a dud because it's not bad. It's just kind of not interesting.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I think it also saves it from like being as a significant like anything like I think just how like because the combination of the on location and how dark it got there at the end.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I didn't necessarily feel like it was dark just because it was kind of gotten silly, but I mean, the effort and the intent is there at least, which is
yeah, I feel like
important.
it makes it more interesting than it pretty much has any right to be.
Well, clearly you enjoyed it a lot more than me, but that's okay. I don't know if we get another two-parter for a while.
I'm okay with that.
Um, the only other one I can think of off the top of my head is Black Orchid, but that's a Fifth Doctor story.
Most two-parters aren't that
No, they're not. Well, I mean, I still think Edge of Destruction is probably
because it was fucking interesting. Like it was really it wasn't even that great of an episode, but it was really interesting.
Well, that's what I was trying to say, I guess, is that I think that the two-parters are a great platform to do the like weird timey-wimey like vortex anomaly negative space wedgie type stories because you can have one episode where everything's fucking weird and then you know in the second episode you can kind of solve it and you can move on and it doesn't have to be this big involved thing, which is kind of made me think of things like, you know, Space Museum episode 1 or Mind Robber episode 1 where everything's really weird and very timey-wimey. And you know, if you do a two-parter, you don't have to have a whole other plot attached to it. You can just do that and be weird and then go at the end.
Why don't they just do a four-parter with the rest of the plot attached to it? Also, be really fucking weird.
Well, that's true, but I mean, the thing is like the longer the story goes on, the less sort of like a strange, abstract, short piece it can be, and the more it has to explain itself, and I think that kind of lessens the fun of it.
Yeah, you're right.
To a certain degree.
I don't know. I've seen a lot of Terry Gilliam movies.
That's true, but also they're only
2 hours is a four-part Doctor Who story.
I suppose so, but I mean, you structure a two-hour film differently than you do 4 half-hour
That's
episodes.
true.
Because
Not
I mean,
unless you're anime.
unless you're anime, but I mean, if you took like the first half an hour of like Brazil or something, and put that out as an episode, I don't think it'd be very satisfying.
Yeah.
So, I don't really have anything else to say about. Oh wait, no, I do. I have one little point of trivia. The guy who played like the lead spaceman who came down to Earth.
Yeah, the one who betrayed them.
The one who ended up betraying them. That motherfucker wrote the Space Museum for William Hartnell.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy shit, that's awesome.
That is kind of awesome.
I really like the Space Museum because it's so fucking weird at the beginning.
Well, I liked the first episode of the Space Museum. As soon as we get into the fucking fat security guards and whatever in the Revolution storage locker.
It was okay.
Yeah. I guess that's about. I mean, I liked that they kept Nerva, the space station, in the story. I liked that it's like a sort of more of a '60s kind of feel where we're bleeding from one story to the next, and it's not necessarily like a hard, little complete self-contained thing, the way it had gotten to be. So, and end of Sontaran experiment leads us into the next story as well. So it's kind of all one piece.
What happened at the end again?
Well, they left and they started to teleport away, but something was kind of fucky with it. And who knows where they've ended up?
Yeah, it was a really interesting ending. I had to watch it twice because I was like, wait, what the fuck just happened?
Well, you will find out, and I think the answer to the question of where have they gone is going to be pretty obvious.
No, I know what the next story is.
Yeah.
It's Genesis of the Daleks, which is one of the most famous Dalek stories.
It's probably the most famous.
It's not the most.
It's everybody's favorite. It's the best-selling classic Doctor Who DVD. It's the one that even a lot of people who don't watch the classic series have probably at least tried to watch or have seen it.
I'm really excited. I plan when we wrap recording this, I'm going to go watch the new episode of the current Doctor Who series.
How are you liking Capaldi, by the way?
I liked the first episode a lot. Yeah, let's talk about that before we go. I really like Peter Capaldi. The first episode was weird because they actually do this. I don't find this as a spoiler, but every time the Doctor regenerates, you get the chance that they're going to do the episode where he's like loopy
Hmm.
for the most of it. Like they especially did it with David Tennant, where he's like knocked out for the whole first half of the story,
Right.
and then he gets his hand cut off in the second half.
or like John Pertwee, who's completely out for the most
Yeah,
part.
that's kind of what they do. Like they're like Peter Capaldi's in bed and he's in the it reminds me of John Pertwee because Pertwee was in like the hospital gown and
Hmm.
Peter Capaldi's in like pajamas.
Interesting. Well, I mean, so is David Tennant, but yeah,
Yeah, and
I'm
David Tennant.
I am definitely excited to see him because I mean I thought he was really really good in Children of Earth. Like my goodness, he was awesome in that. So
I actually watched. I haven't finished it. I need to go back and finish it. But I ended up watching a lot of what's that show he was on that made him famous?
the sick of it.
Yeah, I watched like 3 or 4 seasons worth already.
I was hoping that he'd make an excellent Doctor. I mean, I saw some comments on Facebook that people weren't happy with it, but at the same time, anytime there's a new Doctor or a new producer, certain parts of the internet are going to be mad. It's a little bit like Zelda fandom, where whatever is the most recent is the one everyone hates.
Yeah, no, totally.
So
I 100% agree. Actually, I 100% agree with you on that. But no, I liked him, especially as someone who's been watching so much of the classic stuff lately. I felt like it was a good, strong. Like you could tell that they want that these are people who've always they're fans of Doctor Who now making Doctor Who, and I feel like it was in a good way.
yeah,
There were a couple of small issues with the new episode, but no, Peter Capaldi is a great Doctor.
well, as soon as I saw that he was cast, I felt like the show was going to be in good hands because I mean he's such a fan and he's a good actor and you know he's a little bit older, which takes us back to something that's a little bit more like how the classic series would do things, and not that David Tennant and Matt Smith are like horrible or anything, but it's you know we had two Doctors in a row that were pretty young and rambunctious, you know.
Well, they kind of made they made that a point of the episode was that the Doctor looked old now, and he was like it was almost like he was telling himself something.
Mm.
Like this face is old because you have to accept that you're getting like way older.
That's an interesting thing to say, and just watch for the next Doctor to be like 20.
Yeah, seriously.
I kind of want Stephen Moffat to go, not because I've actually seen any of his run as producer, but I feel like he's kind of been doing the show for long enough now that it's time for new blood. It seems like you know Doctor Who's one of those shows that kind of thrives on having a turnover.
Yeah. Maybe we'll see.
Maybe. I mean, the thing is like if Moffat goes, it'll probably be Mark Gatiss who steps in, and Mark Gatiss has been writing for the new series since like Christopher Eccleston was on it. So I mean, I'm sure it won't actually end up being that much different, even if he does take over.
Yeah. So.
Yes. So next time will be Genesis of the Daleks. It is 6 episodes.
And I'll have listened to Dalek War.
Dalek Empire. Dalek War is the second season. You probably shouldn't start there. Oh, have you? You should have like. Should be a couple of Eighth Doctor audios you haven't listened to. Did you listen to like Neverland or whatever?
No.
Wait,
which one was Neverland?
It was the end of the second season and has.
What happens?
It has a very big cliffhanger.
No, but like, what is the plot about? Like briefly.
Anti-time.
I think I may have listened to that.
Oh God.
I can't. It may. If so, it's been like a month.
Oh well, from what I remember,
confirm it before
the
we
last
go.
the last 4th or 8th Doctor audio I remember you listening to was Time of the Daleks. So you should still have. You should still have a thing left, I think. I will have to.
No, I haven't listened to Neverland yet, but I really want to now.
Okay, well, you should probably listen to that first. Like, finish off the season before you bother diving into big fat.
All right.
Big fat Dalek War. Yeah, do Neverland and then either Sarah Jane or Dalek Empire or whatever you want to do.
Neverland just sounded very. I was reading the plot summary and it reminded me a lot of that episode with the ripping the fabric of time in the other universe, the antimatter universe.
Yeah, it'll be kind of like that. So
Which
so
I
you'll
really
have that
liked that episode because of how weird and ethereal it was. So.
yeah. It's definitely a good one. So you have, I guess, the 8th Doctor finale. You have a season of Sarah Jane and 2 seasons of Dalek Empire. My goodness, you're loaded.
Yay!
Yay!
Everyone,
All right.
we'll be back later. Bye.
See ya.